Thank you. I want to pick up on the issue that my colleague Chris Farfoy was talking about at the end of his call, which is the definition of surveillance agency. And I would very much like it if the Minister and the Chair would take a call, because Part 1 is incredibly important. These are the definitions which define who is covered by the bill, when they are covered by it, how they are covered by it, when they are not covered by it. So if we don't get the definitions right, then the rest of the bill is not going to be much use. And given that the whole reason we're here debating Part 1 of the bill is because our surveillance and security agencies couldn't interpret the previous legislation according to the law, I think it's even more important that we are very clear around the definitions that we are putting in place in Part 1 of this piece of legislation. And what has become clear from the debate here in the House today has been that there is no clarity around these definitions. That echoes what Submitters said at Select Committee. And so what we would like is for the Minister to do her job, which is to provide that clarity. I mean, she's sitting there like a dried arrangement. I don't know whether she's giving us her impersonation of a terminal device where all the data just stops with her and no more info is passed on whatsoever. But she should get on her feet and provide the kind of certainty we're asking for, because these are not unreasonable questions for clarity that members on this side of the House are requesting of her, especially when we consider how far-reaching the implications of this bill are. This is one of the most sensitive issues we will ever cover off, the balance between privacy and security. So any clarity the Minister can provide around the definitions of network operators, surveillance agency, can only be good for this legislation. So I'm not quite sure why she's not taking a call. She's got an army of advisors behind her to provide her with that clarity, unless she wants this to be uncertain, unless she wants this to actually be far broader in its interpretation than New Zealanders are comfortable with, then we were led to believe this legislation would be. Unless she's happy with that uncertainty, because that allows the broad powers in this bill to be extended even further. And if she refuses to take a call and provide us with that certainty, then that's really all that we can assume, unfortunately. This definition of surveillance agency, which is A, a law enforcement agency, or B, an intelligence and security agency, my question to the Minister is, does that only apply to New Zealand agencies or to any agency internationally, any law enforcement agency or intelligence and security agency? Minister, is that restricted only to New Zealand law enforcement agencies and New Zealand intelligence and security agencies, people who can access this data, or could it be any law enforcement agency or intelligence and security agency internationally? Just New Zealand? That really, really worries me, that she's acknowledged my question and hasn't given me an answer. That is really serious. That is saying that because if it just applies to New Zealand, I think people would like to hear the Minister say that, so that we can limit this bill to New Zealand law enforcement agencies, New Zealand intelligence and security agencies.
I think we know the answer.
I think we know the answer, which is this opens us up, the privacy around information of New Zealand citizens up to any law enforcement agency or any intelligence and security agency around the world. And I'm looking at the national MPs over here, and so are you really comfortable with that?
They didn't know.
Are they really comfortable? Did they even know
No, they weren't
that this goes international in its broad-ranging powers? The Minister says it's rubbish. She should stand up and provide some certainty. Does she not think this is an important enough issue to stand up and provide some certainty over? Because this is going to form the basis of a lot of the rest of the debate around the protections around that, around the limitations around that. She might think it's funny. Actually, it's deadly, deadly serious. Deadly, deadly serious. Given how we got into this mess in the first place, given how this is around one of the most sensitive issues, given that New Zealanders feel incredibly strongly about this, I think we deserve to know whether the broad powers being given to the intelligence and security agencies now actually apply to every law enforcement and intelligence security agency around the world, and not just those based here in New Zealand. And I want to, so I look forward to the Minister taking a call on that. I think that actually is a really critical point. And she can chip away at me from the chair. She should stand up and actually take a call. It's what she's paid to do. It's actually what the committee stage of the whole House is meant for. I want to come back, Mr Speaker, to the SOP in the name of my colleague Claire Curran. And this is in relation to the commencement clause of the bill, Mr Chair, which is clause 2 of the bill. And the first SOP, Mr Chair,
I'm calling Moana Maki.
Thank you very much. It's because they're so worried about the definition of the surveillance agency. They were pondering it. They want to know as well. They were hoping the Minister was going to take a call and reassure her own colleagues that she's not selling away the rights to privacy of New Zealanders to every law enforcement and intelligence and security agency around the world, and their right to be concerned. I come back to the commencement clause, Mr Chair, and the SOP in the name of my colleague Claire Curran, and it makes two changes, and the first change is it inserts a requirement that the bill may not be assented to without first holding an independent review of New Zealand's security agencies and incorporating those recommendations into the bill prior to the third reading. This is sensible. This is sensible, given the process we've gone through with this bill, given the fact we have a Minister who refuses to provide any answers to the very, very serious questions we are posing to her. Then the only way we are going to be able to provide any kind of comfort to the hundreds of thousands of New Zealanders who are deeply, deeply concerned about this piece of legislation is to actually do a proper review of our intelligence and security agencies, find out what the issues actually are. I mean, what a novel idea that when we try and fix a problem, we might work out what the problem actually is before we do that. Because I know from the conversations I've had with people, they saw, an intelligence and security agency which went far outside its mandate under the law, which broke the law, acted illegally. Most New Zealanders would say, well, if you're going to have a knee-jerk reaction to that, it would be restricting their powers. And lo and behold, we ended up with two pieces of legislation that broadly expand their powers, and to the point where the Minister and the Chair won't even guarantee, or actually she pretty much told us, that these powers now go offshore, and that every surveillance agency around the world, law enforcement agency, is now able to have access to the private data of New Zealand citizens. That's serious stuff, and that's not the kind of response I think New Zealanders expected following the illegal activities of the GCSB. So how about we follow past the recommendation in the SOP of Claire Curran and have that inquiry and find out what actually went wrong and find out what actually in law needs to change, how we can get that very critical balance between privacy and security right when we're dealing in a telecommunications age with streams of information that we've never had to consider before when we originally had legislation around these issues. How about we actually do it properly? What a novel idea, and that's what the SOP in the name of my colleague Claire Curran says that we should do, that there will not be any royal assent to this bill until we have that inquiry and until the changes recommended through that inquiry are then incorporated into this piece of legislation. And the second suggestion or amendment that we are putting up to the commencement clause, or Claire Curran is putting up to the commencement clause, is requiring that the bill be reconsidered by a select committee and found to be consistent with the Bill of Rights Act 1990 before it can be submitted for royal consent. Now, this is a bill which was substantially changed at select committee. The Minister herself is introducing extensive SOPs. Once again, we have regulatory impact statements that are hugely redacted. I mean, did anyone even really use that word redacted before the national government? I don't think so. I think most people had never it's a new word. And thanks to this government, redacted is just so commonly used now, because in the regulatory impact statements that are meant to inform, this is great. This is the kind of information that the national government are asking this Parliament to make their decisions on. This is a regulatory impact statement on this piece of legislation, and which we're very interested in, and this is what the national government is allowing the Parliament to consider when we pass this. A completely redacted page, just like many of the other regulatory impact statements we've had from them. We're used to it from the national government, but when you're considering the implications of this bill, it is not appropriate at all that we are not given the relevant information to make those decisions. And so I think the SOP, in the name of my colleague Claire Curran, which amends Clause 2 to say that this should go back to Select Committee, we should have that discussion, we should get clarification that we are not breaching the Bill of Rights, and only then can it come back and be submitted for the royal assent. That's just practical. That is good common sense law making, Mr Chair. And it would only, and I know that the National Party don't really give due regard to the Bill of Rights and clearly the rights of New Zealand citizens to privacy. But on this side of the House, we actually value good process. And we actually value that process of the bill, a proper Bill of Rights vet. As my colleague Claire Curran said, it got a cursory vet at the very beginning. It's been substantially changed to go back to...
Point of order, Ross Robertson.
Mr Speaker, I seek leave of the House to table a letter from the NZ RISE group of companies that is relevant to part 1 of this bill around the definition of network operator. It was
Leave
an
a sword
open
for that
letter
purpose. Is there any objection? There is no objection.
Mr Chair,
Nikki
Mr Chair,
Wagner.
Mr Chair.
I've just called Nikki Wagner.
I move that the question be now put.
The question is that the question be now put. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 votes opposed.
Green Party.
12 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
7 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
3 votes in favour.
Mana.
1 opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 vote in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 opposed.
Any other votes?
Order.
She's allowed to leave.
Members, the ayes are 64, the noes are 54. The question will be put. First, we have the Minister's amendments as set out on SOP number 366. The question is that the Minister's amendments be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 opposed.
Green Party.
12 opposed.
New Zealand First.
7 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
3 votes opposed.
Mana.
1 opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 vote in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 opposed.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 61, the noes are 57. The Minister's amendments are agreed to. We now have Claire Curran's amendments to Clause 3 as set out on SOP number 370. The question is that the amendments be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
33 votes in favour.
Green Party.
12 in favour.
New Zealand First.
7 in favour.
Māori Party.
3 votes opposed.
Mana.
1 in favour.
Act New Zealand.
1 opposed.
United Future.
1 opposed.
Brendan Horan.
1 in favour.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 54, the noes are 64. The amendments are not agreed to. The question now is that Part 1 is amended, stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 opposed.
Green Party.
12 opposed.
New Zealand First.
7 opposed.
Māori Party.
3 votes opposed.
Mana.
1 opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 vote in favour.
United Future.
1 vote in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 opposed.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 61, the noes are 57. Part 1 is amended, will stand part. Members, the time has come for me to leave the chair for the dinner break. This debate is interrupted. I shall resume the chair at 7:30.